everybody. Get to interview Arlin Sorensen today with ConnectWise. Arlin's had an amazing journey. A lot of y'all know him already. And, we went through this, like, how do we introduce Arlin? He says, well, I'm just a simple farm boy. But everyone who knows you knows that it's much broader than that. So we'll get into your background in just a minute. So thanks for joining me, Arlin. Appreciate it.
It's great to be with you, Sam. I always enjoy these conversations.
Good, good. So what a year we've had, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I think it's one of the fastest years. 2024 went by so fast. What are some of the highlights to you?
Well, I think our industry was a little bit paralyzed waiting on the election. And so I'm glad that's in the rearview mirror now and things are starting to open back up. As we talk to the peer group members, Q2, Q3 were kind of slow. People were just not making decisions. And so it's always good when people have clarity and know where we're going in the future. So that's been really good. The M&A market has been hot, and I think it's going to really heat up now that we do have that clarity. So that's exciting. We're seeing a lot of people that have been in this game for, 15, 20, 30 years that are having a good outcome. And, that's what we want to see. A lot of people have this idea that if they just work hard, somebody's going to write them a big check someday, and that's not necessarily how it works. You gotta do the right things, and we're seeing a lot of that come to fruition. So it's been a really really solid year.
Well, I know I've really enjoyed the M&A Nation Grow. You had the M&A Nation M&A, and now it's called M&A Nation Grow, or I'm sorry, IT
IT
Nation
Nation.
Grow. um, so this has been like super helpful. I mean, I think about you and I think about how you're helping MSPs. So you had your own MSP for years. Then you started the peer groups, who were HTG, named after Heartland Technology Group. And then, you sell to ConnectWise, and it's really kind of exploded, right? You have over 1,000 members, right?
We have almost 1,000 people in our various programs. So yeah, it's more than doubled since ConnectWise acquired us back in 2018.
And then, so I look at this as not just an opportunity for those who are making acquisitions, but what you're really trying to do is help owners along their journey. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean the reality is that it's a pretty defined formula as to what buyers want to buy, and so our goal is to educate, right, and to help people get started early enough that they're not having a fire drill when they get to the point they wake up one morning and say, "I'm tired, I'm ready to get out of this business," and they want to have an exit, and so the point of what we're trying to do, Sam, is really just prepare people, tell them way ahead of time. The one thing I know for sure is everyone's going to exit. That's not a question. They will exit, and everyone exits. So the point is, let's get started sooner than later, and make it so that people have the adequate runway to make sure they've got the outcome they're looking for. And a lot of people haven't thought about it. They haven't really sat down and put a pencil to paper and said, what do I need to get out of this business someday? um, it's one thing for it to feed your family and to take care of your needs as you go, but it's a whole nother thing to have it create what's necessary for long-term retirement or next chapter of life kind of stuff. So it's critical that people start early. The tools that you can use take a minimum of 5 years for you to actually execute and use them. And so you can't wait till you're a year or two out, or in some cases, they call me on Friday and want to sell it on Monday. That doesn't really work. So that's what we're about. We're trying to educate, prepare, and help people on that journey so they can get the outcome they're looking for.
So when you say a tool, it takes 5 years. What do you mean? What kind of tools?
There's some opportunities to save taxes if you opt into certain programs along the way. It's complicated. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain how it all works, but you can leverage some of the tools that are available legally to change your corporate structure and to operate in a new fashion, but it takes a 5-year minimum for that to be effective, and then you pay no capital tax gains on your income. And so, that can be it's a minimum of 20% savings, but it can be more than that. And so, but a lot of people, number one, don't even know it exists. And secondly, they don't have 5 years, or they haven't thought ahead far enough to have 5 years. And so it's not even in the potential playbook.
Well, I've only been involved for just over a year now, and it's been amazing for me, for my team, the kind of tools that y'all have invested in. So whether it's Sleek or SLI, hearing from Peter Kajawa, but then the group structure, there's a great group that I've joined, 305, a lot of accountability there. We need that as owners because we're not listening. But one of the interesting things that I've heard recently, Arlen, is that, you've got this personal part of, just I think it's unique to you. And, this goes back years because I've known you for a couple of decades now when you were going to IT Nation at Arnie Bellini's bequest, and y'all became friends. And to watch you guys work together was just fantastic. So what I hear, one of the things that's pretty unique about Evolve is that, sure, every quarter we're having to do a business review, which is great. It's very different than other peer groups. So there's a lot of pressure for the right reasons to be ready every quarter. Like we've got to hone our numbers in. I mean, it's been amazing for me. But what I like is you've got these 4 different emphases each quarter. Right. So we just went through our planning phase. Q1, we're going to go through leadership and what we're doing on our leadership team. We did succession in the spring, and then life plan in the summer. And so here, I think I've been living a balanced life and got all these great things together. Yet now you're challenged, and a lot of people are picking that apart, and you see the shallowness of it, and really some of it not even being executed whatsoever. That's just been so helpful and so timely, right? There's been a great timeliness to that for us and our team and for me and my wife. And I look at what you're doing with M&A Nation Grow, or IT Nation Grow, is that whole next step of transition. And buyers that are going to want to buy our companies want 2 to 5 years of runway. It makes so much sense now that I'm immersed in your programs and things like that. So as you look forward to 2025, like how do you see that getting executed, and what's the value, what's the calling card to other MSPs that haven't really joined Evolve or haven't even really thought about a peer group?
Yeah, I mean, you called it out. Most of us are owners because we want to be our own boss, and that's a great place to be, right? There's nothing really better than being your own boss, except when you're your own boss, you do what you want to do, not
Yeah,
necessarily what you need to do.
right.
And that's where a peer group can help you with accountability. We all need accountability, and I was in a peer group in the late '90s, and it was just totally focused on financials. And one of the members in the room had a life issue come up, and the facilitator said, no, we don't get into life. That's too messy and muddy. That's got to stay outside of the peer group. Our focus is on
But it's
financially.
not fair because you bring the whole person to work. So do owners, right?
Exactly.
We help our employees set goals, and because I say, you're going to bring the whole person to work. So if you don't have a good social life, or if you're not taking care of yourself physically, if there's no balance, you don't have a strong marriage and a family, it's going to show up.
Yes,
So
absolutely. So we do have a four part program, and we focus on one area every quarter. Legacy is the foundation, right? So we want you to have both a business and a personal legacy plan, and that really is a critical part of the transition conversation. What are you trying to accomplish from a personal wealth perspective? In order to get there, as a business owner, almost all of us rely on our business sale to be the main feeder of that personal wealth target. So, you got to know what you're trying to accomplish if you're going to get there. It's not one of those things where there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow just because you got up and went to work every day. That doesn't work that way. So, legacy is really the driving force. And, a lot of people haven't thought about legacy, and it's scary to a lot of people. They think it's a bunch of legal documents. There are certainly a lot of legal documents, but it's really way more than that, right? It's about the people in our lives and what we're trying to do and what we want to leave for them. But it doesn't happen when you die, Sam. That's the misconception of legacy. Everybody thinks it's not happening until I die, so I don't have to worry about it. Legacy is built while we live, okay? So the legacy we leave is created every day by the choices we make, how we use our time, how we treat the people around us. And so what I find is that unless we've got a plan and have really thought through that, we don't necessarily use our time as well as we could. We aren't as intentional with the people that we care about as we need to be. And we get to that time later in life and we're looking back and we're saying, well, how come people aren't coming to see me, or the family's not all together for holidays or whatever. And if we haven't instilled that, if we haven't built that, it doesn't happen. And so the beauty of planning is that it gives you the ability to say no to things. When you know what it is you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a business plan or a life plan or a legacy or a leadership plan, you say no to the things that aren't in your plan. And that's a discipline that a lot of owners struggle with, right? Again, but with accountability, and that's where a group can really help. They can challenge when we go off on a tangent that's not part of our plan. And so that's the foundation plan. From that comes 3 annual plans. The business plan that you talked about, we do those in Q4. We have a leadership plan, which is all about how you lead yourself first. We have to start with leading ourselves, but how do we lead the people in our lives and work for us or in other areas? And having an intention about that. One of the biggest roadblocks to MSPs and growth is that they don't have leadership built inside their company. They haven't invested in their people. They haven't taken the time themselves to spend time with their people around leadership. And as they grow, they need those leaders to step up, and they're not ready. And so that's really a major area that we've got to really work on in the MSP community. And then the life plan, right? We all get 168 hours every week. So we have a level playing field. There are no excuses here. We all get the same amount. It's what we do with it that matters. And that's where life planning is important, because you can say no to the things that aren't on there. There's a lot of good things that are going to come your way. You can't do the good things. You got to do the things that are great, that align to your plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and think about the leaders for a minute. If you think about businesses as they transition from one size to the next, it tests our capacity, it tests our interest, our attention, and our really I guess our own depth as to what kind of depth we're going to require from our leadership team. At the end of the day, we're all just kind of technicians, right? Michael Gerber taught us that in E-Myth, right? There's no such thing as an entrepreneur is born, right? We all have a skill, and then we start a business around it, and then we just keep doing that thing, whether we're baking pies or we're repairing systems or installing networks. They get a little more complicated. And I know for years it was all about the technology. We're all talking about the technology, and it's all about technical training. Yet, we don't think about soft skills at all. So, what do you think about when I say that, Arlen? Like how to develop leaders into people who can lead others? How do we do that?
Well, my test is, let me see your budget and show me your line item for leadership development. And I can tell you most MSPs don't have a line item. They haven't even thought about it. And, leadership development doesn't just happen. It's not like, let me give you a book, go read this, and all of a sudden you're a leader. It's caught, right? And so the only way they're going to catch it from us is we have to spend time with them. And we have to be intentional with that time. And, I've seen a lot of success in companies where there's an intentional program that they put in place. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but bringing the people they're trying to train up and grow up together on a regular basis to have conversation, to talk about the challenges they've faced and how they worked through those, and to get peer feedback on what to do, and then that owner one-on-one time showing them what it means to be a leader. It's not rocket science to build them, but it does take time, and we need to be willing to invest.
Yeah, but isn't that for bigger companies, right?
No, it's
Yeah.
not. It's for every company. And the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be.
I'll never forget, gosh, 20, 25 years ago, when we first started out, I was volunteering for United Way here in town. And they said, oh, you really need to kind of come into this whole CEO program and see what that's all about. And it was so eye-opening, Arlen. Like, I'm like, so where do you work and what do you do? And all these people that were actually working for United Way corporate, for United Way of Tampa Bay, were like on loan executives. I'm like, okay, what is that? And so there was people there from Raymond James and Associates, from Publix, from these big companies that said, well, we're getting ready to promote this person. They're going to be a store manager or an executive. We want to build their empathy. I mean, they probably didn't say that, right? They want to expand their horizons. And so we sent them over here to work. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Like, for how long? Like a couple weeks, whatever? No, I said, no, they'll spend 6 months to a year working for this company on our payroll. I was like, wow. Like, okay, that's different. So yeah, you can get creative, but I guess, as a young owner, I'm thinking, that's the big companies.
Right.
But, the more further along we get, it's interesting too, once we start to make moves with our team to experience those kinds of things, how they just are so grateful. And they're like, oh my gosh, that I didn't know that my spirit or I was craving that. Like, I'm so glad to take that thank you for doing that, right?
Yeah, they want to grow, right? They want to experience new things, and the other thing that I see work sometimes, Sam, is that your customers have got leaders in those companies, and they're more than willing usually to come and spend a few hours talking with your team of growing leaders about their experience. And that can not only be a great educational tool, but it's a great way to really connect with your customer.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great idea.
again, it doesn't have to be rocket science. It just has to be intentional, and we have to make time for it. We're all busy. We've got lots to do, but if we don't train up our people, we get to the point where the people that got us where we are can't take us where we want to go. And that's a real heartbreaker for an owner to have very loyal people that all of a sudden haven't kept up. It's not all their fault, right? It's our fault. We didn't train them up and help them get there. But that's painful when you have to replace somebody not because of their own problem, but because your company has outgrown them and you haven't helped them stay current.
Or their own limitations. Yeah, I tell you what, that's one of the interesting benefits from acquisitions that we have seen, Arlen, is I tell a lot of the people that we're looking to acquire, and you'll visit with them, right? So it's kind of like a courtship. It might last months or years. And I say we kind of treat this like an interview. We don't think we've solved every problem at Big Sur. And so we're looking to have, groups, whether it's leadership team or employees with special skills. I guess we all think that just because we're managed service providers, we're doing the same thing, which is mostly true. But man, they're doing it differently, and some of them are doing it way better than we are. And we have gained some of the most amazing people over the years from just sort of smaller companies in Tampa Bay. Maybe the owner was ready to get out and do something different, but they had these great people that were just thirsty and ready to go, and were really sustaining the business, join us and grow into our leadership team. So it's been a neat ride for us. And I think about that and really just look for unique resources and coaches to join them in the journey too. So it's been a good experience
Absolutely.
for us.
Fantastic.
So as you think about I like call the four pillars of Evolve, right? So the planning, the leadership planning, the life plan, the succession planning, huge, right? I had heard about that for decades, but then, we had a couple of peer friends that were running companies that passed away, and I watched those companies have very rocky transitions to last year. One of the owners was going to join our team, and we're going to buy his company out. And somebody I've been friends with for close to 30 years in Tampa Bay. went on a diving trip and didn't come back, and he passed away through that whole process. And so we just purposed to help the family. What can we do? But man, I got to tell you, Arlen, I couldn't believe they had a basic will in place. There was no direction of assets and a lot of the things that we really need to do for succession in place. So the family was stuck. You know, he had a basic will that kind of provided for personal representatives, which we used to call executors of our estate, but they were, his children who were in opposite states on opposite sides of the country, living full-time jobs and families, and just, probably touch base with me once every 2 to 4 weeks. And then the very few employees were left here struggling. And we watched that whole business dissolve in about 4 to 6 months,
Yep.
completely gone.
Yep.
And I couldn't believe, because we're helping, they probably had about 8 or 9 backup agreements that were with a very large vendor that didn't get transitioned properly. And the amount of stress that those customers felt and the employees felt and I felt just offering my services, I just thought, oh my gosh, I have to deep dive into this. I cannot let this happen to our company ever. And so it just happened to be that we were coming upon that in the spring with Evolve, and my peer group shared with me kind of their day one documents they had created. So we probably worked on that for the last 9 months and just signed off on a revision on that, Arlen, that, even our estate attorney was like, this is some of the most amazing work I've ever seen. You put a trustee in place. So I feel really good about, if something really bad happened.
Right. Right.
But it's a really complicated business that we run, and we can't just leave that to chance. That transition is really complicated, but you can simplify it with some effort. But you're right, Arlen, the longer I'm in Evolve, the more I'm working on the business and I'm recruiting my leadership team to work on the business rather than working in the business. And so I just want to say I appreciate all the work you've done in putting into Evolve and all the stages and changes and growth, because it's evident. I mean, it's a remarkable vehicle for, I would say, kind of growing your established foundation so that you can handle those upper floors and upper stages of business.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen a number of cases like you just talked about, right? And they all end badly. That's the unfortunate part, right? If you don't have a plan and you're not prepared, unexpected things can derail and destroy everything. And so it really is important that people stay the course and do the necessary things to make sure
Yeah, you
that
mentioned last week that someone had gone through a lot of the process, but all the documents, the last will and testament, were
they
sitting on
weren't
his
signed.
desk. He didn't finish the vetting, never signed them, right?
Yep, exactly. And that's a problem because it doesn't count, right? No matter how hard we tried to convince the judge that this was his intent, unless we had a signature on those documents, it didn't matter, right? And so, yeah, I mean, and it's not as big of a challenge as people make it out to be. I mean, you can create a basic will, a power of attorney, a healthcare directive, those few documents for a few $100s in a few hours of time. It's not like it's a big, overwhelming task.
But
But
it's
you
no
have to do it.
fun.
You have to, no, it's not fun. And none of us want to admit that someday
No.
we're going to die,
All
right?
right.
But I can guarantee you, you are going to
It's
die.
going to happen.
Yep.
And nobody wants to talk to you about it either. So you're like
Right.
trying to get some ideas from people. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, and,
Well,
and
reality. That's what we're
most of
talking about.
us haven't communicated with our spouses very well.
Yes.
And
Right.
so they're in the dark. And
Yeah.
how unfortunate to leave them to try to clean up our own mess,
Oh
right?
my gosh. Yeah.
I always tell people, if you love your family, you got to do this. This is not punishment on you. This is taking care of the people you care about.
And you and Andre, so Andre Gilmore is our chair for our group. Our facilitator, he brought in a speaker, a woman whose husband had passed away within like the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And she walked us through that. Hey, he was a very successful physician, had a big practice, but, you know, and here I am assuming that he said he's done everything, but has he done everything? And then you need to think about the capacity someone has who is mourning, who has mourned a loss. So there's probably a part of us that go, yeah, they got it. They don't need me. I'm gone. And she was like, look, you can maybe make one or two decisions in a day. And that's usually one of those is, am I getting out of bed? And the other one is, am I going to eat? And that goes on for months. Well, guess what, man? Your business is done. Like it's gone. There's just no way without the passing of authority that they need that they're going to be able to sustain any kind of continuity with the clients. And it's just a huge mess. I'm surprised we don't hear about it more often.
Well, people don't want to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
They don't want that conversation. It's emotional, it's
Yeah.
sensitive, but it's really, really important.
So you got Evolve, you got these great areas of emphasis, including the financials, and then you started a couple new groups, that maybe transition past selling the business. So tell us what that's about. It sounds really neat.
Yeah. We have a program called S to S, Success to Significance. And it's all about what happens in the next chapter of your life. I mean, one of the very interesting things that I discovered was that when an owner sells his business and moves on, they typically say they're going to do three things. They're going to play golf, they're going to watch Netflix, and they're going to travel. And it lasts about 2 to 3 months at most, and then they are completely bored out of their mind and wondering what to do. So, the reality is that as small business owners, we get completely entwined with our identity and purpose being the business.
Hmm.
And when we wake up that morning after we've transitioned, it's like, well, now what? Our Outlook calendar that we've been a slave to for decades doesn't have anything on it. The emails we got are all junk mail now. We aren't talking to our employees like we were or our customers, and we're kind of in a black hole without really having any direction. And so, success to significance is all about helping people who, for the first time in their lives, probably have got the time, talent, and treasure that they really have been trying to go get. They've got it now. They just don't know what to do with it. And they're wandering around aimlessly trying to figure out what their purpose is. And it
Right?
is. But, I don't know how many owners I've had say, I'm not going to be that guy. But they are that guy because when we make that transition, we lose that identity and purpose. And so then you've got to rediscover. And the good news is they've all got the talent and resources to create the next version of themselves and really transition well. But
Well, I went to your
on their
website. It
own,
looks like
you
fun.
need people to
Yeah.
connect with and have those conversations.
How often do you meet? What are you doing? What are your goals?
We meet a couple of times a year, and it's a mini version of Evolve. We have a day of peer group interaction where we have a report format that
Hmm.
people prepare, and we talk about your investments and how you're doing, how things are going with your family, and legacy, progress, those kind of things. And then we have a day of education, kind of our community day, where we bring in speakers to talk about the pillars that we've got there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's accountability. So the groups meet online between meetings and challenge each other and hold each other accountable to the goals they've set. So it's a just another version of a peer group that's focused really on what happens after a transition. We do it as couples, right? So the spouses come, which is one of the unique parts of it. Because what we learned early was that there's no communication at home about this stuff.
Interesting.
Guys don't talk about it. They just and if they do, it's I got this under control. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. But as Laurel shared with your group, that's not the case. They're not prepared. They don't have the information they need.
Man.
we haven't updated our will for 5 or 10 years, and all of a sudden it's not really relevant like it was. There's a lot we need to do to stay on top of it, and the conversations that happen in the room with spouses in the room are very different because there's no smoke and BS going on because they're going to get called out for it. It's a higher level of accountability,
Yeah, I
when you've
bet.
got your spouse sitting right beside you.
That's good. Well, I saw the pictures. It looks like you're having fun. You're meeting in nice places. Yeah, when I think about including my wife, my partner, that's important, right?
Absolutely.
You know, that's good. Now you also have, is it Oak Road? Am I getting that right?
Oak Road Consulting.
Yeah. Tell me about that. What is that?
Oak Road Consulting is our our consulting org, and what Pete and myself and Jim do is really primarily strategic planning
Mm-hmm.
with businesses. We use the StratOp tool to help us work with companies and help them identify what they're trying to accomplish, what the roadblocks are they have to overcome, and the plan to get there. And then we also do life planning. We'll spend a couple of days with a couple and walk them through the process of really laying out their plan and the details that it takes to actually execute it. And then we do some ag peer groups. So we facilitate groups of farmers or farm consultants. So it's a very different environment, but we use the same basic format, right? We talk about those 4 plans. And I mean, that's the reality is that, as human beings, we need to have a legacy plan. And then we need to have these annual business leadership and life
Mm-hmm.
plans, whether we're running an MSP or we're running a farm in the middle of Ohio.
Love
Um,
that.
the issues are the same, right? People are people, and farmers don't talk to their spouses any better than MSPs do. So there's a lot of opportunity there to help
Yeah.
people figure out what's important and then hold them accountable to get there.
Yeah, so I talked to Pete a little bit last year about StratOps. It looked very interesting, and it was nice to see that there's kind of some competition to EOS. We've had the book come out 20 something years ago for traction, and now all of a sudden you have this big movement with the entrepreneurial operating system. But those guys come in and they only meet with you 3 or 4 times per year, and I think the StratOps was a similar format. Is it similar, different? What are the unique value to the StratOps?
The way I try to differentiate them, Sam, is that EOS is really an operating system. It's about execution. It's extremely good at that. StratUp is more about strategy and identifying exactly where it is you're trying to go and how you're going to get there. It's not really as deep on the operating side, but it's deeper on the strategy side.
Okay.
And so what I tell people on EOS is, you keep doing it. EOS is awesome. Just make sure your ladder's leaning on the right tree, right? The strategy side of EOS is not nearly as strong as it is in StratOps. So, ideally, if money's not an issue, I tell people use them both, right? Use StratOp to set direction and make sure your strategy's right, and then use EOS to climb that ladder to the right location. So
Okay.
they're different, but both are designed to help companies get to where they want to go.
Very important. Thank you. That's good. Now, I'll throw another tool in there since I'm a neophyte at Evolve. Sleek has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, my mind was blown. So, we had a coach. I'm not sure if you are familiar with Kara Knight, and she was in Evolve for years. She's in my hometown, Lakeland and Polk County, very close to us. And we met her at one of the devotions at IT Nation. And she's been a perfect coach to come in and kind of be there on a weekly basis for us to kind of implement these tools. And so I said, man, Sleek looks just huge, right? And she goes, well, why don't you go through it yourself first and see what you think? Because you're involved in the business, and then take your team through it. So I did. Arlen, it was like looking in the mirror, like, oh boy,
Yeah.
this is all the decisions, all the poor choices I've made for the last 25 years. And I felt like I needed to pull myself up by my own bootstraps before I took my team on a retreat to look into it, kind of digest it and warm them up to the thought of it. It was amazing, and it still is. We love the way you can share out the licenses. So what we'll do is I'll have my core leadership team of 4 meet with me on a weekly basis for our ops meeting. But we do planning and we do investment of time into the company to change it. I bring in people from the different areas like sales, accounting, or the help desk, or our project team. And I have given them the additional licenses and assignments. And that thing is amazing. And I'm blown away to think that, and it's so specific to MSPs. And when you go through the questions, especially as a group, everybody has heard of like all these multiple choice answers like A, B. Okay, yeah, I kind of have gone back and forth between the answers A or B. And then C, well, yeah, yeah, we've heard about that before. And then D and E are just completely like, oh gosh, what I would have to do to get to that level in that particular area of my practice is going to take a lot of work. So you're talking about 2 or 3 years to what you're gaining in an operational maturity level to advance the whole business will help really better satisfaction on so many levels. I can't even describe it. So I'm very grateful to you guys for kind of pulling together all these tools, and then I'm grateful to my group for like calling me out. Even Andre was like, but did you went through it by yourself, but have you gone through it with your team yet? And I'm like, we're thinking about it.
Well, the way I think about it, Sam, is that StratOps like at the 20,000 foot level, right? It's looking down the road at where you're trying to go. EOS is the 5 to 10,000 foot level,
Yeah.
and then you've got Sleek, which is on the ground, boots on the ground. Here's
Okay.
how you actually execute. Once you figure out what you need to do, want to do, prioritize, this is what you do to go do it.
Well, it's been awesome for us. So as
And
we
then we
talk,
benchmark you to make sure that you're actually doing it.
yes, sir.
We'll measure your success.
So as we go through all these things and things y'all been doing for a long, long time, what do you think are going to be the things to look for in 2025?
Well, I mean, the new elephant in the room is AI and RPA, right? And so that's going to revolutionize this industry and quite honestly, every industry, at different paces, but it's going to happen. And for MSPs, we got to number one, we got to use it ourselves, right? We got to learn it by using it. And so that's the first step is get people educated. Talk about a leadership opportunity here. You got to have investment in somebody or a few people that can lead the charge. It's not as easy as you might think, right? Or as easy as some advertise it to be, but it can be learned, right? And I can tell you there are partners that are investing significantly in this,
Mhm.
dedicating people, not, hey, if you have a few minutes, why don't you kind of look this over and see if you can figure something out? That's not going to work.
No.
This is way too deep and too wide for people to do it in their spare time. You
Hmm.
got to be willing to invest in somebody or some people to really learn it so
Hmm.
they can apply it in your own company, and then you got to take the next step. How can we do this for our customers? That's going to be the differentiator in the marketplace, I think, in 25, 26, 27. The MSP that has used it themselves, and the main driver is going to be, saving some money on operational costs, but then has figured out how can I take this to Joe customer and apply this in their environment, right?
Okay.
Because when you help them save money or make more money, they're going to be very loyal to you as a provider, and they're not going anywhere. It'll be one of the tools that will help you retain clients like nothing we've had before.
That's great. So on the AI side, we see great partners like Pia and Roost. Well, also too on the, I think the business tools side. So Microsoft has really done good things there. Um, what else do you see? Like, because
Yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
the tools are out there. It's the application that's really where people are lagging, right? My Copilot, Microsoft's tool is a fantastic tool, but when I talk to end user customers and small businesses and ask them, "What do you think of Copilot?" I don't know. I mean, this thing shows up on my screen, and
Yeah.
I try to type some stuff in there, and but I really don't have any idea what I'm doing or how I could use it to actually make money in my business, right? And Roost and Pia and the ConnectWise Sidekick, there's AI and RPA tools out there, but you have to apply them and really dial them in to what you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say this because I talk to a lot of MSPs throughout the year, and I would say only, I don't think maybe three or four are really making this, taking the steps to do it to the point where they have, okay, we have a pilot we can run for you on how to use these tools, or they are even considering running them for their business. So yeah, it's so funny. Like, it's like I remember thinking about security 10 years ago. Our team was like, hey, are we getting diving bigger into security? And I was like, isn't that market saturated already? Right.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of room still in that. And we're
Well,
already seeing it too on the revenue side, like you had talked about. And I love this with SLI and Peter Kajawa kind of showing us the last 20 years that as we ramped up toward an election, that budgets got tight and kind of ramped off. But then right after that, the year after that was a big year of prosperity. So we're already seeing, it's only been a month, and a lot of clients, a lot of people that were in our pipeline are calling saying, hey, I think we're ready to go, man. We're ready to pull the trigger. And we're like,
yeah.
okay, here we go. We really want to go home for Christmas. So that's
Yeah,
exciting.
that clarity will help move the needle significantly. One of the partners I know, Sam, has got 30 full-time resources working on AI right now.
Wow. No kidding.
And you
Huh.
compare their presentation to a customer to somebody that's not even sure how to spell AI, which one's a customer going to go with? They're going to go with somebody that has a plan. And so you got to get in this game. This is not one you can sit back and say,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'm just going to wait and see what happens." It's happening, and it's important for people to start learning it sooner than later. And the vendors want to help you. They want you to be successful because you'll use more of their tools. So,
Hmm.
but you have to commit the time and the resources to be able to do it.
So I think one of the last things I was going to chat with you about is really just kind of your personal journey. And you've got this great newsletter you send out every day, and those of us who signed up for it. And by the way, not only do I really like the balance between whether you've got your grandkids up on the tractor and the combine and you're harvesting, or if you're talking about ConnectWise, it's actually how I found out about some of the events that were going on because you do a really good balance of that. But there's also a really deep spiritual side to you. And so, one of the things that I find pretty interesting is, where does faith exist in a business? I mean, some people just kind of wear it on their sleeve. And I think even for those of us, that have a deep faith for decades now, it's like, is it kind of in the way of business? How do you find a balance?
Yeah, well, I would say there is no such thing as balance, right? You got to manage the tension between faith and work because there's too much demand on all sides of running a business. So it's about managing the tension. I bought in early to this whole concept that you can have faith and work and be successful. And in the 90s when I was building my business, I decided, when I go to work, I'm going to check my faith at the door. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to do my job. I'm not going to do anything, stupid, but I'm just not going to be faith oriented in the workplace because people have told me you can't do that. So I bought into that. I checked my faith, and what I found was that over time, I quit forgetting to pick it, or I forgot to pick it up when I went back out of the business, right? And pretty soon I was rudderless on the faith side of my life. And that's not a good place to be, and it does cause you to make some poor decisions
Hmm.
and go in the ditch a bit. So God got my attention and whacked me upside the head with a 2x4, which is what often has to happen for me to get the message. But the reality that I got, Sam, was I can't separate faith
Hmm.
from what I do, and be a true believer, right? You can't do that. It
Hmm.
is core to my spirit and who I am. And so I decided that I'm going to ignore all the people that are telling me I can't and just do it. And so I began to work my way back to a deep relationship with God and letting Christ control my life day by day.
Mm.
And a big part of my process was I began to write. And to really, the thing I learned about that is that, when it goes through your fingers through a pen or through the keyboard, you got to have a little clarity before you can actually write it down or type it out. And so, it helped me to really focus. My daily email that I put out has got three sections. The first section is kind of what did I experience yesterday that I want to think about and process. And I have a section on scripture where I study a passage each day, and then there's what I learned from somebody else, thoughts from other people that have written stuff that I think's worth thinking about. And so I started doing that in early 2000, and I wasn't all that faithful about it. I'd do it when I had time or when I got around to it. Uh, and after a few years of kind of off and on, one of the guys that was on my list said, you talk about discipline, you talk about, accountability. I'm calling BS. You're not being accountable. If this is real, you need to do this every day. This God thing is not well, let me talk to you today and I'll put you on the shelf for a while. And then if I need you, I'll come back. Well, I bought into that and started writing much more intentionally. You know, in 2008, God really said, okay, are you all in or not? Right? And I said, I'm all in. So since 2008, September of 2008, I have written 5 days a week, every day from 2008 until 2024. I missed one day. People look at me like I'm an idiot or crazy, and I am, uh, because that's a lot of writing.
That is a
Okay, I
lot of
mean,
writing.
I got piles of paper.
I don't know how you do it.
Well, I don't always know how I do it either, but we do it. But the discipline of that, Sam, has changed my life. The fact that every day I get up and I meet with God and I pray and I study and I have that input into my life to start the day. That's huge. It keeps me grounded. It gets me on the right foot. And I have found that over the years, it's been a big part of my success. Is not because I'm doing anything special other than I'm just having a relationship and writing it down. And people come and go off the list. And I tell people all the time, if you read everything I write, there's something wrong with you. There's no way any human should read that much stuff from one guy every day. But, I write it for myself. Technology allows me to share it freely without a whole lot of work. And so I do that. And, there's about 850 people that are on the list every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes up and goes down, but that's kind of where the number settles out. It's just crazy that I'll run into somebody at an event or something and they'll say, you remember when you wrote that thing, like 5 years ago and it changed my life? And it's like, well, I have no idea what I wrote 5 years ago, but God did know and God connected you to that day. And that's, every day I get an email or two or three from people that said, hey, what you wrote today was exactly what I needed to hear. I just want to be an instrument that God uses to change people's lives, right? And whether it's through the peer groups and we're helping them be successful with their legacy, or it's through what I write daily, I want to help people be successful. And a big part of that is a spiritual relationship. We are all going to die, and beyond the impact it'll have on our business, eternity is a very long time. And
Well,
so,
you're right. And we're spiritual beings and we need to feed it. So everybody's
yep,
on a spiritual journey, even if you
absolutely.
don't believe
Whether
in
we know it or
anything.
not, it's true.
Yeah.
So, that's the story of what I've done. My daughter writes now every Saturday, so it comes out 6 days a week, and it's been a powerful tool in my life and my journey.
So when I think of it, Arlen, I'm grateful because there's not a lot of examples we have that are consistent. right? So if anything, you've been consistent for a number of years now. You said since 2008, right? So 16 years, coming up on 17 years. It makes me think about Tony Dungy. So when Tony Dungy came to Tampa, nobody knew about him, right? So this was 1996. I was working at IBM, and I was young, married, just kind of still trying to figure out life and very ambitious, but what are you going to do? And all of us wrestle with those things. Like, what are we leaving at the door today to make sure that we're successful? Sometimes it's just, good health choices. Oh, how am I going to eat? I'm on the road, right? I mean, so, but spiritually, like, are we taking time to kind of get ourselves centered and really do what's important? So so we all have gone up and down with that. But as a young 20 something, young 30 something year old, who are the examples in the marketplace? So the Glazers hired Dungy. It's 1996. We've had one of the worst football teams in the history of the NFL, right? My father and I used to watch the Buccaneers when I was a kid, and when they got the team in the 70s. And so here comes this new person, this new person. Nobody knew about him, right? So
Yep,
I'll
yep.
never forget the St. Pete Times did an interview of him and his family. And right there on the front page of the sports page was a picture of them with kind of sullen looks on their faces, not like smiling, just like heavy. And they had placed the family Bible, this big black Bible, on the living room table right in front of the camera with this. Everything was kind of decorated in white. I'll just never think about it. I'll never forget. It was like yesterday. That time he only had 5 kids. Now he has 10. And he said, so the sports writer is interviewing him and said, okay, Buccaneers hire a man of faith to lead to be their skipper. And I just thought, oh boy, I remember saying and praying for him right then, thinking, okay, I hope he's not a casualty. All that pressure. I just hope he can stay the course, right? And then, wow, man, the next 6 years, they was great. He turned the team around. He recruited people of character. It was incredible, but he got fired. And so he goes on to the Colts and he gets interviewed. I remember, Jim Irsay coming on TV and the reporter being like, okay, isn't Tony damaged goods? You really want him? And Jim was like, look, if the Glazers want to let him go, if the Buccaneer organization don't want him, we'll take him in a heartbeat because not only is he going to transform our team, he's going to transform our city. And I thought, maybe there is life after, a disaster, right? About getting fired. And then his book started to come out, right? So Quiet Strength was like this biography of what was going on at the time and how he and Lauren navigated all that pressure and all that change. And he was just very much like open-handed, just like not vindictive, but well, maybe there's just no future on us in the NFL. We'll see if the doors continue to open, if people really want us to work for them and lead their team. And then he goes on to lead 2 Super Bowls. The guy's amazing. He's on television right now. But his character, hasn't seemed to crack, right? There's all this time now. How much time is that? 30 years of this example that we have. And I'm just so thankful because I really feel like all of his books and his writings, and you included, it's the addition to the New Testament. I mean, we don't really all we're leaning on, so much of the time is these ancient writings. And now we have these amazing people around us you're living it out, man. You're in tech, he was in the NFL. They're both high pressure industries. And so I just wanted to let you know when I think of you and you're all the way through IT Nation, the old days of Arnie Bellini and y'all befriending each other and helping to bring what I think is a real balance to IT Nation. I put you up in that category. So.
Well, don't put me too high. I mean, the reality is, Sam, when I look at the life of Jesus, he didn't spend his time sitting in the synagogue. He
Mm,
was in the marketplace.
yeah,
He was where the people were, right?
right.
And we have got a huge opportunity
Mm.
to really change the world by just letting our light shine in the marketplace. The beauty of God's principles in Scripture is that they always work.
Yeah,
Always. They never fail.
yeah.
And so we've got a resource at our fingertips that allows us to not only, share good things, but to win in the marketplace because God's stuff always works.
When I thought about this interview, I thought about some of the last words that Jesus said to Peter. And he said, "Hey, Peter, do you love me?" And what'd he say?
Yeah, feed my sheep.
Feed my sheep. And then he asked him again, "Do you love me?" And he goes, "Yes, Lord, you know I do." And he goes, "Okay, then shepherd them, lead them." And so his final words, right? We all hang on the final words that my father spoke to me when he passed away in 1992, right? Those final words are so important. And so at the end of the day, you're right. We're building legacy every single day. Every person we help or we hurt, right? It's our legacy, and we have an opportunity to do good. And so, yeah, I just appreciate what you bring every day, because it's challenging both on a business side, right? But every other, it's balanced. I feel like what you're doing is you're bringing balance to the marketplace, and that's helpful. That's unique. Yeah.
Well, I just keep getting up and writing, and I've often thought, what am I going to do when I run out of something to say? But God's got something for me every day, and I just keep using my fingers to type things and share what He gives me.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. And we're coming up on an hour, so I appreciate your time today. Man, let's go home and have a great Christmas and a new year, and I guess get ready for January 1, right? It's
Yeah, well, the
coming.
grandkids all show up today, so
Yeah.
we're going to go from peace to chaos here in a few hours.
All right, brother. Well, be safe. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, it's great to be with you, Sam. Thank you.